Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson's Missing, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook, coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson's double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also, Mike Wagner Show is brought to you by A Sweet Summons by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David, available on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Summons, Serena Wagner. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, 40 podcast platforms, heard in 100 countries worldwide. We're here with the amazing, multi-talented, esteemed illustrator, storyteller, born and raised in New York City. He's begun his career slapping his images on the street of as a teenager. He has countless picks for The Nation, New York Times, and also The Progressive. Recently has 40th color for the New Yorker. We'll talk more about that. He has a new book about three Bohemians, which is a painter, a street dancer, and an aspiring musician struggling to answer the question, is it possible for an artist to survive in the 21st century? And we'll also talk more about the book Naked City, live, ladies and gentlemen, Plus Studios, somewhere in beautiful downtown Berkeley, California. The esteemed illustrator, storyteller, born and raised in New York City, has also books Flood, Blood Song, Howl, and Slingshot. We'll be talking his latest release, Naked City. And ladies and gentlemen, we got the multi-talented Eric Drooker. Eric, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
We're doing great. So we're doing great.
Well, thanks for having me here in your studio cubicle.
Cubicle indeed. Of course, it is solid too. So yes. Nothing artificial about that one. Knock on wood, you could say. So I miss those days of cubicles and boots, I'll tell you. Yeah. You're a esteemed illustrator, storyteller, born and raised in New York City, now in Berkeley, California. You began your career slapping your image on the streets as a teenager. You had countless picks for The Nation, New York Times, The Progressive, and also recently had your 40th cover for the New York Times. And also the best part, you have a new book about three Bohemians, painter, street dancer, aspiring musician, struggling to answer a simple question. It's in the book Naked City. And before getting all that, Eric, tell us how it first got started.
Well, I don't remember exactly who gave me the crayons and the magic markers, but some big person provided them for me back when I was 2 or 3 years old. Oh, wow. And I've been going ever since. It wasn't until a few years later that I had to learn how to read and write and all of that, but I've been drawing pictures since earliest toddlerhood.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, pictures are my first language is the visual one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course I remember the crayons back in the days. You had your own sharpener and all that. I love having crayons, I'll tell you that. Just draw. That's
yes.
Amazing.
Yes, I still use some of the same materials. Pastel on paper, watercolor, you could get fancy and do oil on canvas if you want to, but I still like some of the earliest media that I've been using.
Mm-hmm.
And I like getting my hands dirty. I play around more and more. I've been messing around with some of the digital tools, with Photoshop and things like that. But they're just tools, whatever. These are just the means. The ends are the image. You're trying to get the image that you have inside of your head, outside of your head, onto a piece of paper or onto a screen or what have you, so that you could share them with other members of your species.
Mm-hmm. I remember back in the day too, like those transparent ones you bought at a dollar store. It's like, those stencils, you have that paper, you lift it up, you write, you lift, you write, you lift, and that was followed by the Etch-a-Sketch. I had fun with both of them.
Yes. Oh, yes. I spent many, many hours on those. The Etch-a-Sketch, I'm not sure what that other thing was called. I think it had the word magic in it, where you draw with a little stylus.
Yes,
I think tired of it. You peel it off and you get a fresh slate.
I think it was called Magic Pad or something. It's like something Magic like something. I don't remember, but yes. There was also the spirograph as well too. So
yep, I had that one. Spirograph. Yes,
spirograph. Yes. That's the one. Oh my gosh, I'm really going to my microfiche for this one.
So. Yes, yeah. So these were my original tools and medium that I played with, and then I stuck with it. I guess that's the only thing different that I did was I stayed focused on the visual art. Eventually, I learned how to read and write and arithmetic and these other things. But I focused on the visual. That was seemed to be what came most naturally to me as far as communicating ideas and emotions. I found that I was more effective doing it visually than trying to write out, write a description, write a paragraph.
Hmm.
It's good to know how to do both, of course. And in this most recent book, Naked City, it has both words and pictures in it. It's
Okay.
a combination of words and pictures, like most comics, the medium of comics, where you have a sequence of panels, and then you have word balloons. So the different characters you could be speaking to you, they could be thinking. Then you have to do it in a thought bubble. You could have captions. It's really its own language, but it's a hybrid language between words and pictures. And that's what this latest book is. It's really a combination of the two. It's mainly visual, but there's plenty of words, plenty of word balloons, lots of dialogue between the different characters.
Hmm. You certainly got a lot of them as well, too. I remember getting those books where you have the dialogue, the balloons, and everything like that. Those are actually fun to read. And who are some of your favorite illustrators, favorite artists, and also favorite comics and everything like that growing up?
Yeah, well, that's a great question because it goes way back, earliest childhood. It was well, there was just cartoons on the TV set, like Bugs Bunny was always my favorite.
Oh, my favorite,
Warner
number
Brothers,
one.
as far as
Yes.
animation, that's animation, but that's more a sophisticated art form. You need a whole studio team of artists to come up with that. But if we're just talking about illustrators or storybooks or comic strips, we would have to zero in on someone like, well, Dr. Seuss was a major one
One of my
going way
favorites.
back.
Uh-huh.
And Peanuts, Charles Schultz,
My childhood
some of
favorite.
those.
Even they had the Charlie Brown cookbook. I remember that.
Charlie
So I love
Brown.
Peanuts. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's where most of us start in the West anyway. And then by the time I was 6, 7, I discovered Mad magazine.
Oh, I remember that. What Me Worry? That
Yeah,
was my favorite. I loved it.
so it was a whole new ball game once I was hooked on Mad magazine because Mad was satirical. It was making fun of all of the other books and all of the other comics and television commercials and everything. It was goofing on it, but in a pretty hardcore, pretty sophisticated form of satire.
Hmm.
But I started reading it avidly by the time I was 7 or 8 years old. I was hooked. Wouldn't miss an issue every time. And the new one came on the newsstand each month. That was it. I had to have it until I was, I don't know, adolescent. At some point, I guess I graduated to underground comics, Zap comics, and some of those artists who gradually morphed into what we now call alternative comics or graphic novels. I guess
Hmm.
that's the more legitimate term. A
Hmm.
graphic novel really is just a big fat comic book that's could be a couple of 100 pages long. Well, my latest here, Naked City, is over 300 pages.
Oh,
But
wow.
it,
Okay.
it's using the medium of comics, words in sequence with word balloons and thought bubbles and all of that. But it's hundreds of pages long, so it's more of a novel. It's a graphic novel,
Hmm.
and you can't read it in one sitting because it's too long. So this is one of the definitions of what a graphic novel is. It's a comic book, but that's so long that you need a bookmark to come back to it. You can't just read a couple of strips like it was Peanuts or Archie or something like that, or Batman or Spider
Or
Man.
or Dick Tracy or
Or
the
right,
Wizard of Id, and I think there was also what else was there? The Born Loser, and I'm trying to think of all the comics that we read over the years. So we had all that.
yeah, yes. Well, it's a blur. I mean, there were hundreds of them, but yes, Dick Tracy was a big. influence, Little Abner. It goes on and on. Little Orphan Annie.
Mm-hmm.
I often, even now, I'll study some of the old comic strips, newspaper comic strips. Before the comic book was invented, before superheroes, you had these newspaper strips that were maybe 4, 5, 6 panels a day, and you had to wait till the next day to read the next 4 or 5 panels.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always studying just the technique of those artists, like Winsor McKay or George Harriman or Chester Gould, who did Dick Tracy, or
I remember Chester
Charles
Gould. Yes.
Schultz, who did Peanuts, is maybe the most familiar to our viewers and listeners. But I go back and study the old comic strip, the old comic books, the way a painter would study art history and would be studying Rembrandt and Picasso and the Renaissance and just going back centuries of art history. The medium of comics has a whole history to it that goes back over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a relatively new art form. I mean, it only goes back about 100, 150 years, whereas painting goes back, a couple of thousand years, tens of thousands of years if we include the cave painting, those Paleolithic
I
paintings
remember
we did
those,
on the
like
walls of
buffalo
caves.
or the Indian paintings, and I think there was also the Romans, the hieroglyphics, the Greeks, and of course you also had Latin as well too, which is amazing.
That's right. So if we include that, and why wouldn't we include all Egyptian hieroglyphics? It's as much of the art history as anything. In fact, you crack open any art history book, they usually start out with ancient Egypt, or sometimes they'll have a token cave painting or two at the very, very, very beginning. But the point is, we've been doing pictures for much longer than we've been writing, and we only developed the written alphabet just in these last few thousand years. But we've been drawing and painting pictures for 30, 40, 50,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that we've also, as individuals, we start out with our crayons and drawing pictures when we're 2, 3, 4 years old. And we don't learn to read and write, and learn the alphabet and learn grammar till a couple of years later. So it's really replicating the whole experience, recapitulating the art history and human evolution, where it's the pictures came first and the words took a while to catch up. I guess words are a more recent technology than pictures.
Right. And of course, nowadays, they pretty much draw pictures like in their tablets, their phones, laptops, desktops, and everything like that. And of course, it's also taken a whole new level. And of course, also taking a whole new level with Flood, Blood Song, Howl, Slingshot, and of course, the latest book, Naked City with Eric Drooker. We'll get that in just 1 minute. But first, you listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those who love be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has got great reviews, and Eva Levin enjoys by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassie, Forbes Riley, and Bunny Ellis. So grab your copy today for It Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson-Zia on Amazon. Double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also, Mike Wagner Show is brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David, including 30 exquisite paintings in King David Psalms. The Sweet Psalmist gives a new perspective on the life of David through the Psalms he wrote, his time as a shepherd, and his turbulent and complicated relationship with King Saul. It's a story of love, hope, betrayal, repentance, and more. Check it out. The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist, Serena Wagner. Check it out today. Also, Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com. 40 podcast platforms, heard 100 countries. Take us with you on any mobile device. Follow and subscribe to us on Spreaker, Spotify, Anchor, iHeart, Apple, iTunes, Google Music as well. Also, BitChute, Rumble, YouTube. And for great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Be sure to check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast, t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. For more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/me and Wilson Zia for great books like Missing, Once, and Wrinkles, plus t-shirts, pop sockets, hoodies, phone cases, and more. Amazon.com/me and Wilson Zia, and support the Mike Wagner Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. We're here with the amazing Steve, illustrator, storyteller, born and raised in New York City, now in Berkeley, California. Eric Drooker here on the Mike Wagner Show. Before we talk about Naked Seed as well, too, and just want to say congratulations on your 40th cover for the New Yorker.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, they accumulate over the years. In fact, this most recent one, the Christmas cover I did, was number 41.
Oh, wow. Okay.
41st cover. Yeah.
So you started another 80 years then, pretty much. So
something like that.
Or 40 issues.
That's right. It's a weekly magazine. So it's interesting. You know, I escaped New York City a few years ago. I've been living on the West Coast. Yeah, I do a lot of back and forth. I suppose you could call me bi-coastal.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I was able to let go of New York after a lifetime in Manhattan, after a while, you internalize a place. I felt like it was in my blood after a few decades. And it dawned on me that I no longer needed to be living there. I didn't need to be there in person. I was free to go. And hey, I'm just drawing and painting pictures all day long anyway. So at the end of the day, as long as I'm able to communicate with the art director at the New Yorker or any other publication, you know, that's what I do for a living. As long as I could zap it to them through the internet or FedEx it to them somehow, it's not really necessary that I be right there in New York City like it used to be. Mm-hmm. When I started working for the New Yorker many years ago, I would go up there in person. I would take the elevator up and I would meet with the art director and I would hand her my most recent painting, oil on canvas, and she would, oh, thank you. And then she would go upstairs and show it to the editor-in-chief, who would think about it, and then she would come back down and there'd be some back and forth. All of it in person in the analog world. Mm-hmm. But things aren't done that way in the 21st century now, where we just are expected to scan it in, you know, digitize whatever it is you did.
Right, or do it by phone or tablet. We do it a lot.
That's right. Or just, you know, scan it or take a snapshot of it or a video of it and send it. And then, you know, we see it. That's a good enough approximation. And then we'll get back to you. But very little of it is done in real time. It's a series of emails back and forth. And then one day I'll hear, hey, congratulations. What happened? What did I do? And, you know, the New Yorker is already out. It's already there on the newsstand. So things have a way of sneaking up on you now.
Mm-hmm. And certainly does as well, too. And plus, you have countless pictures for The Nation, the New York Times, and also the Progressive as well.
That's right. But the New Yorker is the one that has full color on the cover. And it's one of the last magazines now. If you go to the newsstand, that is, if you could find a newsstand in the 21st century, hardly any magazines have art on the cover. It's almost all photography, right? Never mind artificial intelligence. The technology of photography has supplanted most art. If you look at whatever it is, Time Magazine, Sports Illustrated, what have you, it'll be a photograph on the cover. Whereas the New Yorker magazine is committed to having art every week. They've never had a photograph on the cover, and they're just celebrating their 100th anniversary this year.
Nice.
So they're kind of a last holdout where they kind of trust an artist to to do this, to be on the cover without any, without superimposing it with a lot of text, with the table of contents right on the cover, like a lot of other magazines do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I value, and other illustrators value, the New Yorker, because it's one of the last games in town. If you want to, if you're a painter or any kind of visual artist, and you want to be seen by the mainstream, the New Yorker is one of the last publications that features art on the cover.
Mm-hmm. And I just thought about a while back how most of the magazines are going with digital photography, digitizing, and
That's right.
And possibly with AI. Do you think the New Yorker is going to go AI sooner or later, or is that going to resist?
Well, it's hard to predict these things, Mike, isn't it? No, everything about artificial intelligence is extremely unpredictable. Like, it seems inevitable that it's going to be shifting the landscape and putting a lot of, even the most optimistic predictions agree that it's going to put millions of people out of work.
Oh my gosh!
But but the question is how dangerous is it really? It's hard to say, but it may take a while. It may take several years, or it may just be a year from now. If we talk a year from now, we may be shocked how many things have been replaced with artificial intelligence, including writing, a lot of art, a lot of editorial art. And why should an art director pay an illustrator $500 to do a little spot illustration when they could just type in a few keywords and have the AI spit out something that, maybe it's not great, but it's good enough. Mm-hmm. It's good enough for their publication, and it's free. So mm-hmm. Considering how many things are really dictated by economics, it seems inevitable that artificial intelligence is going to change things pretty radically, the way that the technology of photography has. As you were starting to say a moment ago, photography, certainly digital photography, which is what 99% of photography is now, it's a game changer. It's much quicker. Everything about it, it's quick. And if time, in fact, is money in our system, it means that, well, the photographer doesn't have to spend hours in the dark room under a red light bulb. They're able to just go ahead and zap it onto Photoshop and forward it on to their art director or whoever, or to family members to share the photos with. So almost everyone is a photographer now, because every telephone.
Yeah, it's so easy. Click.
Right. There's a lens and a camera built into everyone's phone and everyone's device. So that's something that kind of snuck up on us almost overnight. And that was certainly a game changer. And the fact that all of these publications now use photography on the cover instead of illustrations or painting or visual art, it's because it's much quicker, right? It's quicker to just take a picture than it is to draw a picture or to paint something. So that explains why all of the magazines and album covers and all of that is, the art directors choose to use a photograph because it's way more affordable for them. So that's, in a way, that's the tragic part. They're making this short-term decision based on economics, and yet I think in the long run, all of us are shortchanged rather.
Mm-hmm. And of course, this also led you as well too, not just taking pictures, putting them in book for Naked City. You also did some books with Flood, Blood Song, Howl, and Slingshot. And tell us more about those.
Well, as we're getting deeper into the subject of art and the way art has changed, and even the career choice of artists has become more risky than it ever was before. And it was always a uphill battle to survive, to make a living as any kind of artist, musician, writer, visual artist, dancer. So this was happening. So I was seeing this, so many vivid examples of this and different creative friends of mine that I decided to do the new book is really very much on this subject. Naked City it's about these three different artists. One of them is a painter, traditional painter. One of them is a singer-songwriter who hitchhikes from the Midwest to the big city to make it as a musician. And she meets a street dancer named Alex. So Alex is trying to make a living with her dance, but is realizing that it's virtually impossible. Who's going to pay you money to dance? Certainly dance on the street. But she's doing it. She goes out there. People toss coins into the hat. She makes a few dollars an hour, but it's not really quite enough to pay the rent anymore.
Mm-hmm. Or food or gas or shelter or and worse, insurance. And they say, I was talking to a lot of people, that insurance is the number one that's killing a lot of people nowadays, even career wise.
Yeah, literally are killing people in more ways than one. The stories I hear, I mean, the horror stories that all of us are hearing about insurance, health insurance, and people who couldn't afford it, and then ended up getting sicker and sicker and dying from it. It turned out that the vast majority of those people had health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
That's the shocking part. It would be one thing if many people can't afford health insurance in the first place, and a big percentage of the population simply can't afford it, and they're running the risk of getting serious disease, and many of them are going to the hospital. But it's even worse than that. It's that most people they pay hundreds of dollars a month for their health insurance, or if they're really lucky, they get it through their job. Their job pays for it, or takes a cut from it each month and pays for it. But even then, the health insurance companies, most of them are so unscrupulous that even when you're insured, good luck getting them to actually kick in. If you have some serious condition, you have to then, it's like pulling teeth getting them to actually pay up like they agreed to when you signed the contract. Or homeowners insurance. If there's a flood or a fire or something, you go, thank heavens we had home insurance. We're insured for this. Oh yeah, well, good luck getting the insurance company to actually reimburse you. That's a whole
the
other
flood.
whole other
Oh my
project.
gosh, yeah. Oh, I've heard
There's so many people are
nightmares of it.
upset
Oh my
about this. I
god.
mean, this could be a whole book in itself.
Right. Yeah.
I don't even feel like going down that path.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Well, speaking of flood, we're talking about that. Your first graphic novel won the American Book Award, and Charting a New Train. Tell us more about your first book.
Yeah, well, the first one I did several years back, I just simply called it Flood, one syllable, because the story itself, I decided to dispense with word balloons and captions and words completely, and the entire story, 150-page novel, is told purely with pictures, a sequence of pictures, like a comic strip, except that there are no word balloons. It's all, well, it's like silent, like an old Charlie Chaplin movie.
Oh right? Yeah. Well, what was it? The silent films before he came talkies. I remember
a little bit like that. I always loved those silent films. Of course, in silent films, they occasionally have captions, right? There's someone playing the piano on the side of the screen. But so this book doesn't even have captions. The entire story is told in the pictures. So the pictures are all very expressive, and you read them the way you read text. You read from, well, in the West, we read from left to right, from top to bottom. And the whole book is like that. There are maybe 6 panels on the page. You read from top to bottom, and then you turn the page, and you're able to read the entire fairly complex story of Flood, which is a story of an artist living in the last days of the 20th century. Mm-hmm. And it starts raining outside about halfway through the book. And it just keeps raining and raining and raining. And this takes place in New York City. The artist lives on the 7th floor.
Oh, wow.
But by the last chapter, the rain has risen that high, and the water starts flooding into his apartment. And well, I don't want to give away the story, but
Right. Yeah. You'll wash out the whole thing if you did. So.
yes, that's right. But it's been published in various countries. It got picked up as a French edition, a Spanish edition, a Korean edition, but they don't have to translate, and there's no translation because it's just pictures. Again, it's that picture language you were talking about, Mike. That's an ancient form of communication.
Mm-hmm. Right. And of course, that's the best part as well, too. And of course, jump right into Naked City. And part of it's also the naked truth. We'll find out 1 minute with Eric Drooker. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Studios. Brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Milson Missing. Also brought to you by Sweet Summons by Serena Wagner, based on life of King David. Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Summons Serena Wagner. We'll be back with you, multi-talented Eric Drooker of Naked City after this time out. We're back to the multi-talented illustrator, storyteller, born and raised in New York City, now in Berkeley, California, Eric Drooker here on the Mike Wagner Show. Now let's get to the naked truth with Naked City. And this literally does talk about the naked truth with the 3 characters, what's the life of an artist. And yeah, it just reveals the naked truth about everything.
Well, I guess that's one of there are many themes of the book, but one of the primary themes, and it's right there in the title, Naked City. It's about nakedness, this condition of being naked, as opposed to being nude. The artist, he paints nude models, and we get into that. But then nakedness, well, if you look it up in the dictionary, the different definitions of them, one of them is just like an expose, the truth, as you say, the naked truth, or looking at something, with the naked eyes. So it's a state of being, well, emotionally, it's a state of being vulnerable, which is always a good starting point in any story. You want to empathize with the protagonist. The protagonist is feeling extremely vulnerable, and she's got her thumb out on the side of the road. She appears to be hitchhiking somewhere. She's hitchhiking to the big city. But we don't learn till the end of the first chapter that she's not simply hitchhiking to get somewhere. She's actually running away from something. She's always having to look over her shoulder because, again, I don't want to give it away, but found herself in an extremely vulnerable situation back home and had to take off, had to split.
Mm-hmm. Now, is she based on a character in particular, or anybody, or is it just a composite character?
She is. I suppose you would call her a type of composite character. She's a combination of 2 or 3 people I've known over the years. Guys, mainly, years ago, I had this girlfriend who was pretty hardcore. She went out there and hitchhiked across the country. Her and her dog. She had a dog who was half pit and half German Shepherd, or half pit bull, half Doberman, something like that. So she felt relatively safe, but she was 19 years old, hitchhiking across the country. It was still a big risk that she was taking, and she had all kinds of adventures that she told me, and that's where a lot of the inspiration for this story comes from. At least the first chapter, it begins with this woman who appears to be about 18 or 19, and she's hitchhiking, but it's the middle of the winter time, and that's when it dawns on her that maybe the middle of December might not have been the best time to hitchhike on the highway, and she's freezing cold. But she finally gets a ride all the way to New York, and she starts out as a street performer. She's playing her music on the street and down on subway platforms, and she's making a few dollars an hour, but it's not really enough to pay for the rent and utilities and food and these other necessities that we all need to live. And that's when she becomes desperate and starts looking for different jobs, and she finds a job, artist's model. She doesn't really know, and it even sounds a little bit sketchy. If
Hmm.
she shows up,
Sketchy. I get it. Yes.
get it? She decides, okay, we'll see. We'll see. If the minute this starts feeling a little bit weird, I'm going to split. But she's pleasantly surprised the following day when she drops by the artist's studio, and he appears to be totally legitimate. He has all these easels with paintings, and he has a series of landscapes and nudes that he's been painting, and he's hiring her just to pose nude. She figures, well,
Mm.
okay, all right, and that's the first instance in this 300-page book of naked. She has to remove her clothing and be in this vulnerable state in order to make any money at all. Later on in the second chapter, the painter himself, we get to know him a little bit more, and even he's in a very vulnerable state because, well, his painting career hasn't been going so well lately. In fact, he's been painting nudes, but his dealer is telling him, hey, people aren't interested in nude painting anymore. Yeah, they were a few years ago, but these days, let's face it, everyone is just looks at porno on the internet now.
Right. Yeah. That's taken off to a whole new level.
Yes,
Even
so no
to
one's really
nearly put
interested
Playboy
in
out of
your
business.
nudie paintings, son.
Right.
So then there's that, and of course the whole thing is a comedy. So although there are some serious themes about survival, making a living, and being vulnerable in different ways, it's ultimately a comedy. Especially the painter character is drawn as a real cartoon character, whereas the other characters are a bit more realistically drawn.
Hmm. Now, this comes to mind as well, too, that artists are having a hard time making in certain areas unless you're into computers and all that. America cares to be a singer, painter, and street dancer. What are there certain arts that are harder than others when it comes to make a living? If so, which ones?
That's a good question. I mean, all of them, if you're doing them well, I think are pretty challenging. And it's always been difficult to try to make a living from it. I mean, that's a whole other ballgame. I don't necessarily recommend that. You could just continue to make your art or make music, and that could be one of the joyful things you do. But for those of us who decide usually early on that we want to do it professionally, we want to do it for a living, many other things come up, like, well, certain sacrifices you have to make, and accepting that, well, maybe we're not going to be earning very much money. Maybe we'll be paying the rent and paying for food, but maybe we won't have a whole hell of a lot left over. So these are all the things that come up in the different chapters of this book, the different sacrifices they make. Some of them tragic, but some of them quite hilarious. And bringing it right up to date, the fact that now that we're a quarter into it, right? We're 25% finished with this 21st century, right? The first quarter is down. We're entering the second quarter now. We're getting pretty deeply into it. And what we're discovering is that, it's always been challenging to be an artist, but in the 21st century, it's damn near impossible to make a living from it.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I had a head start because I started doing it very young and I had some lucky breaks. And I was born and raised in New York City, where a lot of the galleries and publications were located. I was able to just drop right in on the art directors. And I always had inspiration. There were all these different art museums around the city I could drop in on that were free back in those days. Now you have to pay 20 or 30 bucks just to get in. So every way, in every regard, the bar is much higher now if you want to be a creative. I'm hearing this used more and more. Are you a creative? The word creative used not as an adjective, but as a noun.
Right. Yeah, I hear that all the time as well, too. And
I think it's a new buzzword. I've only been hearing the word creative used that way in the last 5 years. I don't quite know how I feel about it. But of all of my creative friends and multi-talented friends, hardly any of them are able to survive off their art. Virtually all of them have day jobs, in other words, which mean, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it simply means that you have less time to devote to the artwork itself. You can only do that in the evening. How much energy are you going to have after a long day of work? Or you could only do it on the weekends, and be a Sunday painter, as the cliche goes.
Mm-hmm. And I
which
think
is still better than nothing.
Right. And I think that's a pretty good arena as well, too. And what more can be done to support artists, and how can we help?
Well, by buying books, just supporting artists, just by buying the work that they're hustling, whether it's a CD, right? If you're a musician, would love you and hug you and kiss you if you bought their CD, because people don't buy CDs from musicians anymore. They simply stream it through, through Spotify.
A lot of them: Spotify, Spreaker, iHeart, Odyssey,
Apple,
and they can watch
Spotify
on YouTube and
seems
everything.
To have
yes.
a monopoly. I think Spotify is the biggest one, and
Oh
it's a
my
pretty raw
gosh.
deal for the musician. I mean, they get a couple of pennies at the end of the year, but it's they get a bigger cut if you actually buy their CD or go see them when they're performing in your neighborhood or in your town. If you hear that this band or musician is coming through, go see them. Have that be your Friday or Saturday night event. Go out and see live music.
Or even vinyl as well, too. Vinyl's making a big time comeback.
I hear vinyl is making a comeback. So yeah, actually purchase it. These are ways that you could. I mean, many of these things you're probably doing anyway because people enjoy listening to music and buying records and CDs and books, novels, graphic novels in my case. Mm-hmm. But actually go to your local independent bookstore. If you're living somewhere in some rural area and you have no option, okay, buy it through the internet if you must. But even that, it means that the artist is selling copies of their book, and that's that this is certainly the way I support myself, is by selling books and selling illustrations to different publications. So all of these things, all of that helps. And I can't really exaggerate it enough how grateful our artists are when we feel like the public is supporting us by coming to see us, by coming to see a live performance or a live play, or dance, or book of poetry, anything like that. This is, of course, instead of just reading it online. All of this stuff is online. You could be streaming movies and television online. That's all well and good. But above and beyond that, how about going out and doing some live entertainment? The artist gets a much better cut that way, and maybe reading an actual book, buying and reading a book rather than just streaming it or reading it through electronically through Kindle or something.
Kindle, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Hey, by the way, where can we find your book, Naked City? If you want to show it to everybody, and that would be greatly appreciated. Just show the book and tell everybody how they can purchase the book. Yeah, I think you were playing with it for a while too, I noticed. So that's what we're having here.
I just happen to have a couple left. I've been selling them a lot this week. People have been ordering them for me. I've been sending out signed copies. I've been selling hundreds of them that way. But mainly, it's available in stores everywhere.
Okay.
Your local bookstore should have it on the shelf. Naked City, a graphic novel. If they don't carry it, order it through the local bookstore. It's out there. It's got a major distributor. Random House is the distributor. So it's readily available. If you wanted to get a signed copy with an original drawing inside, just drop me a line.
We'll certainly do that. And how they contact you for a special copy?
It's right through my website. It's very simple. It's just my last name, Drooker, Drooker.com.
Drooker.com.
Yeah, you could spell it for your studio audience.
Yeah, DROOKER.com.
That's it. You could
How
even
easy
see a
is it?
sneak preview of the book. I give a half a dozen pages. You could see all 41 of the New Yorker covers. Many of them will probably be familiar to you. You will have seen them over the years. And there's hundreds of images to look at. And if you like what you see, if you like the New Yorker covers, well, this Naked City, the graphic novel, is like a New Yorker cover come to life. It's this whole long story. The whole thing takes place in New York City, in Brooklyn and Manhattan Island, where I grew up. So this is probably my most personal story so far.
And certainly amazing as well, too. And make sure everybody get the book. We're here with author Eric Drooker of Naked City, esteemed illustrator, storyteller here on the Mike Wagner Show. Just a few more things, Eric. What else can we expect from you in 2025 and beyond?
Well, keep an eye on the newsstand. I do New Yorker covers every once in a while, every few months. And The Nation magazine, The Progressive, some of these indie publications I often do covers for. Beyond that, in the bookstores, go to the graphic novel department, and you could find some of the other graphic novels I mentioned, like Flood or Blood Song. Naked City is the third volume in this trilogy. I'm calling it the City Trilogy because the whole series takes place in New York City. But of course, each book stands totally on its own. It's not like a sequel to the last one, but they all have that theme that they take place in the city. So that's why I'm calling it a trilogy.
Okay, that makes perfect sense as well. We want everybody to check it out. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
I had to narrow it down to just one or two. Well, again, Dr. Seuss was a major one. Mad Magazine was a major one. Picasso, I could go on. Rembrandt, Bugs Bunny, R. Crumb.
Oh, R. Crumb, I remember that. Yes. Oh my gosh. List goes on and on. Yes. I think I'm ready to go to YouTube and watch some of the cartoons after this. So
some of the best graphic novelists in recent years are women. They're just coming out of the woodwork. As a woman named Kate Beaton did a graphic novel called Ducks, which is fantastic. Emo Ferris. Eleanor Davis has a fantastic graphic novel called The Hard Tomorrow. It had been comics had been really like a boys' club until recently, but I think some of the most powerful graphic novels coming out in the last 3 or 4 years are by women. So that's a real game changer too, and kind of optimistic. It bodes well that we're getting a fuller picture of the
right, yeah, and that makes
the human experience, the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
We're hearing from everybody now.
Right, yeah, and that's really prevalent as well. Be on the lookout for that. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point, Eric?
To stick with it, to stay with it. That you got to be patient, and these things take time. They're not going to happen overnight. They're going to take time, and lots of doors will be shut in your face, and you're going to be rejected. And continue. If you're an artist, you're going to continue to be rejected most of the time. But just take each rejection as feedback. Okay, that was just a dress rehearsal for the next one. You're going to go home and you're going to do another one, but you'll have a little more insight this time. Each time you're sharpening your axe, you kind of have to look at it that way. Whatever art form you're doing.
Oh,
just
yeah.
Keep on doing it over and over and over again. And don't get too precious about any one short story or poem or picture. Just keep cranking out dozens of them. Crank up the music so you're listening to your favorite music while you do it. So you're having a good time. Enjoy yourself while you do it. But be patient. It takes a while for these things to develop.
Mm-hmm. I think many of us could use patience right now in this day and age. I'm glad you mentioned that. We're here with the amazing multi-talented Eric Drooker of Naked City here on the Mike Wagner Show. Eric, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having you again soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. We'll love to have you back. Once again, what's your website? how do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
Yeah, well, it's talking and we're using all these words here, but if people want something for their eyeballs so they could see what it is that I'm talking about, just look at the website, drooker.com, D as in David, Rooker, drooker.com. And there's a wealth of images, hundreds of images. Many of them will jump out at you and be familiar. You've seen that as a street poster.
I've seen that, yes.
As an album cover for your favorite band. I've done dozens of album covers over the years.
Nice.
But what I'm focused in now is the graphic novels, because I feel like that's something I could really sink my teeth in, work for several years, put all of my philosophy, all my experience, all of my sense of humor into a long form story, and then release it in book form, and people could really enjoy that over a period of several days.
Oh, yes. And I think
so take a look at the website. There's probably a computer nearby if you're curious to see some examples of what we're talking about. Naked City is right there. I think that's the landing page right now. I have that set. Mm-hmm. You could right away, you could see some examples of what the artwork looks like, and you could see, you could read a little bit about it. I have links to different book reviews and things like that.
All right. Well, certainly check that out. Once again, Eric, very, very thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Looking forward to having you again soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Glad to have you back.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Yes,
no problem. Hey, you know something? You definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Okay. Till we meet again.